Welcome, everyone. This is Baseline Tech Talk Tuesday. And if you're joining us for the first time, you can catch every episode that we've previously done. This is episode 35 of season 2 and all of season 1 and all the 34 episodes we've done before, all on YouTube. You can search for them using Baseline's handle, which is Baseline Web Training, all one word on YouTube. And then Dan Conger, our training manager, is always producing new helpful how-to videos. So if you're in the field or you're in your office, you want to learn how to do something with Baseline, the quickest way might be to look on YouTube. Today, we have two special guests. We have Tracy Shields. He's the RSM in the Greater Midwest, Pacific Northwest. And we have Jim White with Pacific Sports Irrigation out in the Oregon, Seattle area. And we have Chris Wright, our VP of Sales, myself, Andy Humphrey, Irrigation Technology Consultant. And today we're going to be, for lack of a better word, sort of following the data and reminding everyone the story of Baseline, kind of why we do what we do and how it unlocks the potential to learn more about your site and the data that's there and how you can use that to make better management decisions. And we felt like there's really no better way to talk about this than to actually talk to someone who uses the data real time, which is Jim. And so I really think, Chris, we should probably kind of kick this off together before we dive in and start asking Jim 10,000 questions.
Absolutely.
I think we should really, talk about our two-way communication and how we pull the data from the field and deliver it to our users.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's really the foundation of the technology as a whole, right? So Baseline's in the business of providing engineered solutions in the irrigation industry and market, utilizing sensor-based controller platforms. And the sensor-based is really the key concept there. Many irrigation controllers can turn valves or solenoids on and off to follow a program to irrigate, but with sensor-based irrigation, we can use data from sensors of various types that are installed on the site, connected to the controller, and then use that real-time data to operate or automate a system to enhance its performance and to also help us manage it better.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, I like how that when you think about a sensor, it's kind of, well, what is the sensor doing? It's collecting data. And that's really, well, I guess there's lots of different types of sensors, but to us, the value is collecting the data, not just tripping a switch in a mechanical sensor fashion, but actually collecting the data and delivering that data from a point in the field back to the controller, and then delivering it to us, the user, by piping it up to the cloud so we can either automate with it or just use it to make real-time decisions or manual decisions.
Absolutely. And it speaks directly to the patent technology of our two-wire system, right? So we're using a pair of wires with networking protocols to collect data from sensors in the field, and then using the data gathered from those sensors to automate the operation of the system. So a lot of complexity associated with it, and a lot of capability associated with it. And every site isn't going to use data in the same way. It depends a lot on the manager and the user on a site, what data they're most interested in and what they may reference most frequently in order to help them manage the system. So that's where, Jim comes in to play as a super user, if you will, of Baseline's technology and managing a very large corporate campus in the Pacific Northwest, and how he can reference the data and monitor it to manage the system better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Jim and Tracy are actually sitting in an office at this facility, right? They're literally on site. And
and it was kind of auspicious, it was totally impromptu. We found out that they were going to be together on site today, and we literally within the last hour pinged them and said, "Hey, you have to join Tech Talk Tuesday today because what you are doing as a user is perfectly applicable to what we're talking about today.
Yeah. And that's just what we want to do here with Tech Talk Tuesday. This isn't something that's canned, that's been, massaged on a PowerPoint for hours. We are just kind of going, raw right here, having a real-time discussion with whatever comes to our mind, just based around this particular topic. You can see my notes for the day. Just a blank page.
Definitely. So, and with that being said, if there's anybody that has any questions or input or feedback as a user and, looking at the data that Base Manager generates, throw it in the chat, throw it in the Q&A, and we'll address it live together.
Yep. So maybe we can't mention Jim's site by name, but as Chris mentioned, it's a large corporate campus. Can you tell us, Jim, a little bit about the size of it, maybe number of zones, water sources, just something to give us the scalability of the site?
Absolutely. So we're running 7 3200s right now on this site. We're pushing about 700 zones total, give or take. The site is growing like a weed. So we're adding zones literally every year. We have 2 main control points, 2 main 6-inch control points, and they're not linked; they're separate. So it's a north campus and south campus that should set up. 6-inch mains with 1.5-inch bypasses on both of them. So we've set those up so our 6-inch main is normally closed, and the 1.5-inch on both of them are normally open. So the main lines are charged all the time that way. And, we have 5 or 6 sub control points on every one of the controllers. So we're getting real close to pushing the 8 control point limit on those. And of course, we run a flow station on both north and south campus to share flow with all this. So, yeah, it's pretty complex. Awesome. It's a lot of fun.
So you brought up several things that, are initially mind blowing. One, you've got 6-inch main. So you're, running a lot of flow. You got 7 controllers that are operating off of these control points. You got 800-ish zones, 700, 800 zones to manage for any given irrigation cycle. And you've got sub-mainline configurations associated with that too, right?
Correct.
So it's easy to identify that the site is utilizing all of the horsepower of a baseline system in managing the hydraulic structure, as well as managing the normal program operation of the zones.
Correct.
So what type of sensors do you have installed on site?
Well, so our primary sensors are obviously flow sensing. Mm-hmm. So we have we're using almost entirely the Netafim hydrometers. So we got master valve and flow built in on those. So like I say, we have at a minimum 6 of them on all of the 7 controllers. And I think a couple of them we've got 7 control points on. And then of course the moisture sensors on the other side. So we got roughly 10 to 15 sensors on every controller.
Very cool. All right. So, you mentioned this bypass scenario on your main line with your control point. Tracy, what is the bypass and what's the purpose of it?
Yeah, so that bypass.
You got to come a little closer, Tracy.
Yeah. So that bypass is set up. He's got a 6-inch hydrometer that's normally closed. So it's closing that large hydraulic flow on the main line, but then he's got, is it an 1.5 inch hydrometer that's normally closed, normally open. And so it keeps that 6-inch main line charged all the time, which allows Jim to do mainline leak detection and run smaller drip zones, lower flow zones without having to open the main 6-inch hydrometer.
Awesome. Very cool. And the reason for that bypass is to get, some tighter resolution, right, on lower flow zones also.
that's a benefit from it. I mean, the site actually keeps it open for pressure washing.
Yeah, we're getting the blockage going here with the voice again.
Microphones impeded.
Pull us in a little tighter and see if we can hear. Go ahead, Jim.
Get a little closer. Maybe you rub cheeks together. All right. So we hear Tracy fine, but now we can't hear Jim, which is interesting. Yeah. But that's okay. Moving on. So you've got flow sensing that is your primary sensor reference, and then you've got moisture sensors, and that corresponds to exactly what we wanted to talk about today, where those two sensors and the data that they generate and how that's usable or meaningful in managing the system, right?
Yep. And so, Jim, I can ask you the question, and maybe Tracy, you can answer if, we can hear you better. Mm-hmm. You got 7 controllers, and you mentioned 10 to 15 soil moisture sensors per controller. So that is, north of 70 soil moisture sensors across the site. And that's a lot of data to look at. And of course, we can use that data to automate. And maybe what we should do is go into, are there one or two or a few sensors that you look at as like your almost like KPI? Is there one that you look at to make decisions with or see how your site is doing?
Yep. I think that sensor's on the Schmidt controller.
All right. So I've got screen to share here. Let me pull it up.
And maybe another word to use would be like, is there one that's your barometer for the site? If you're not going to look at all of them, which one do you tend to go to as your resource?
All right. So is this moisture graph showing?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Awesome. All right. So we've got moisture sensor. Beautiful graph, by the way. Congratulations. Always love to see moisture graphs that show a good wetting of the soil profile and then a corresponding dry down over time, and then showing a corresponding irrigation interval. So you're seemingly managing this off of a lower limit threshold. Is that correct?
Yes.
So it dries down to a allowed depletion level before it will allow an irrigation cycle to happen, right? And then the cycle will run and it will re-wet that soil profile. So this is showing a period in July. If I recall correctly, in July, that area was experiencing record heat. Is that
Yes, it was. 115 at that time.
115 degrees at that time in Portland.
Yeah. So with the moisture graph during that period of time showing an irrigation cycle every other day, whereas you would expect, with those temperatures that you'd have to water every day in order to maintain plant health. We're using the moisture technology to measure in real time evapotranspiration as it's occurring in the landscape, right?
That's what we're saying. Yep.
How do you interpret this graph, Jim?
What are you looking for? I'm looking at it as so this is a parking lot island situation. Unfortunately, shallow roots, and we have to water this more often than we would prefer. More frequently.
Right. Okay. So if this is a barometer sensor, a go-to sensor that you reference, what is it that you like to see?
Oh, I like to see the sensor going down to its low threshold.
Okay.
And that's what kicks it on.
Perfect. All right. So like we said, this is a great looking moisture graph that is showing the dry down of the landscape and then the wetting of the landscape through irrigation cycles, which are happening every other day for 20 minutes.
Yeah. One of the things that I noticed, Chris, that I like about this is the dry down is one. Absolutely. What I think Jim's done a great job of is the actual runtime. That 20-minute runtime is filling it up to what we might call almost true field capacity. He's not overwatering it because we're not seeing that needle spike. That needle tip on the moisture graph would be a reference to overwatering. And so Jim's done a great job of watering up to field capacity, the best that I can see. So that to me is great, looks great.
And these are on 4 cycles, so they run for 5 minutes.
All right, so you're cycle soaking them.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Obviously, at this resolution, we wouldn't see the moisture graph show that slight variation in that wetting pattern over time, but that is a great best management practice when irrigating with soil moisture sensors, so that you're applying a cycle, allowing that first cycle to break the surface tension of the soil, then applying a second application or cycle and creating that capillary action laterally through the soil profile, and then another cycle to push it deeper into the root zone. So perfect.
Yep. And maybe if we have time, we can take a quick look, or I can share my screen. I have a graph here that shows overwatering. And that's one thing that we kind of want you guys, if you're learning something today, is about what the data is showing us visually in that graph, is that when we water into saturation, it spikes up like this and then just drains down really quickly. And you can easily pick that up in your moisture graphs. And when that's the case, you really want to lower your run times, because we're just simply overwatering. The soil can't hold the water that we're giving it. It's wasted.
Yeah. Why don't you pull that up and you can show it?
Okay. Let's see. Can you see this, Chris?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So another example of we have runtime, 25 minutes, and we have the moisture in green. And this was taken from a project that has engineered soil, is one that we just happened to be looking at a couple of days ago. And what's interesting about this is the feedback we got from the irrigation manager is that the tree specialists wanted to water every day. They told the irrigation manager, please water this every day for 25 minutes, right? The manager of the trees is not looking at this data. They are just simply saying, we want 25 minutes every day. So when we look at the data, we can see clearly 25 minutes every day. We can see moisture going up every day, but we see these needle tip, for lack of a better word, these spikes. And that is showing us overwatering, because the soil cannot hold this extra moisture that's applied. And when you reference that to the way Jim was watering, it stopped and then it had a slow dry down. Jim's graphs didn't have this needle tip of overwatering. And what's kind of cool about this site is, yes, it's engineered soil. So by overwatering, we are likely not going to cause any plant damage, because the soil can drain. It drains well. It's just wasted water. It's totally wasted water. We could probably have a 15-minute runtime on here instead and achieve the same results.
Yeah, good point. Very good. So looking at the data and being able to interpret it correctly helps you to manage the site better, right?
Yep. Even if they wanted to water every day, 25 minutes is too much. We need to stop before these spikes happen, so they can get the same results by applying less water.
Yep. All right. So stop your share and I'll reshare, because I've got a different graph or period with the same sensor on the site that Jim manages, that shows what it looks like when we get out of peak irrigation season and get more into that downhill curve of the ET curve coming into the fall months. Mm-hmm. So same zone, same moisture graph, looking at it in September versus July. And you can see that we've got now every third day irrigation happening instead of every other day. And then the system just kind of starts to taper off and manage itself based on that automation, and not irrigating as much or as frequently, and still maintaining that moisture content in the soil to ensure plant health, right?
Yeah.
So Jim, how would you interpret this? And how are we getting these increases in moisture without corresponding run times from the zone?
Well, this is Oregon, right? So We had a very dry summer right up until about that one spike, and we had a deluge of rain, thankfully.
Yes, agreed. Yeah. So here you got, free irrigation of your landscape essentially through rain events, and the sensor is able to respond to that. And during that time frame, when it was below the allowed depletion, it wasn't irrigating.
Yeah,
and then another one here.
Skipped 6 days during that period due to that rain event.
Right. Exactly.
And if you think of that across your 800 zones, if every zone were to have a sensor or be tied to a sensor like this, that's a ton of water. 800 zones, right? Skipping 6 days.
Yep.
And about that time, we just cut the percentages back. We manage a lot through percentages.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll take it down to 60%, which looks like what that was.
Yeah.
And then Chris, right there on the 27th, we had another rain event, and it, at the end of September, it didn't run either.
Yeah. And I believe if we were to change the interval, the date time, it would.
Yep. And I like how you're doing this in real time, everyone. This isn't just a screen capture on a PowerPoint. Chris is actually in Base Manager pulling up this report information.
So here we could get, there's the 27th, right? And it's only irrigated once since that time.
And what will happen? Eventually it won't run ever, because the soil will be wet and it will stay wet almost indefinitely above your threshold, because it's moving into fall then winter.
Yep. So let's answer the question that was brought up that I showed on screen when I opened the chat. Were these single depth sensors? Jim?
What was the question?
Is it a single depth sensor? Just one sensor at one depth in the soil profile?
Correct. Yes.
Yep. And in this case, do you recall how deep the sensor is likely buried?
3 inches.
3 inches. Yeah. Okay. So it's shallow enough to see those irrigation events and those rain events.
Oh, certainly.
In a timely manner, right? So this is, like I said,
this is parking lot islands. They got trees, but they also have ground covers that we've got to water more frequently.
Yep. Awesome. All right. So that's a look at moisture. Let's take a look at flow data. So if you're looking for flow data using App Manager, Jim, where do you go?
Pipeview.
You go to Pipeview?
Always. That's our diagnostic.
Okay.
Okay. So Pipeview, for those that are unfamiliar with what it is a illustrative model of the hydraulics associated with a controller. So here we've got, let me share again. We've showed this before, not in real time though, with the actual man that manages it joining us. So it's pretty cool. So sharing here, hopefully we've got Pipeview showing.
Yep.
Cool. All right. I don't know if I can move. I don't think I can move that. All right. So this is showing the hydraulic structure of the South Campus water source, where we've got water source here of 6-inch feed onto property. And then here it shows the first control point configuration, where we've got that 6-inch hydrometer, and then in a normally closed configuration, and then a 1.5-inch bypass feeding a primary 6-inch main line that is then distributed across the site to various control points that act as sub main lines to the primary main line, that then have other main lines associated with them that are feeding valves that are then irrigating the landscape. So something this scale, it's pretty complex. Being able to have a visual illustration of what that looks like so you can monitor and manage it correctly is pretty powerful.
Yeah, click open those valves too, so that everyone watching can see that where the valves are displayed. Because I think it helps paint that picture on which zone number is tied to which main line is tied to which water source. You're able to kind of follow the water all the way down to the zone.
So if this system were running right now, the water source would be blue. Likely the 6-inch hydrometer would be showing blue, and these pipes would color coordinate, showing the flow of water from the water source through the primary control points down to sub-mainline control points to main lines that are of likely different size pipe, all the way down to the zone level, and you'd be able to see which zones are operating concurrently at that time based on the design flow available to them and their programming. Mm-hmm. All right, so as you're looking at this, Jim, what do you go to first?
I go to the color code, so I'm looking at just what you're saying. Things are operating in blue. Obviously, I look for something that's red. And
okay, I'm gonna zoom out and see if there's anything that is operating in blue, or if there's anything that's associated with it that is red. Looks like everything is stable and nothing is irrigating at the moment.
Right. And you've just gone from South Campus to North Campus, and I saw one pause alert, which is not surprising.
Okay, let me zoom over right here.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so this is on a separate water source, right? Different part of the property, different controller.
That are not on flow station.
Right. Not on flow station, and we've got zones 1 and 12 in pause conditions, likely because the water window's closed or something, right? Okay, but that color coding helps you to visualize how water is flowing on your property right now. So if we go into one of these control points, what kind of information do we see from those?
Well, that's where you can see real-time flow and chart flow on that.
Okay.
Yeah, but I like how Jim got to this information from Pipeview. This is a great way to get there, because you can also run this through the analytics app inside of App Manager. But I like how you get to it from here, Jim, going to your visual dashboard of all your zones and then drilling down to the water usage.
Yep. It's quicker than going to every controller and looking at messages.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. All right. So we've got this system right now. It's not operating. So we've got zero flow, but we've got static pressure at 91 PSI. So that's cool to see, right? That's good data. If this were showing much lower pressure with zero flow, that could be alarming, in that we've either got an empty main line because the hydrometer was closed and something broke and drained it out, or we've got some kind of hydraulic issue associated with it. But this is the real-time data of the flow activity that we like to look at, and it's got corresponding pressure associated with it as well.
Yep. Right. And just for the sake of time, Chris, we have just maybe 2 more minutes. Mm-hmm. We should probably just highlight on what you're looking at right here. I think we've got 1 minute, or is it 1 month selected? We've got 1 month selected. And what's really unique about not only this screen, but analytics, is you can drill this flow data all the way down to the minute, not on this screen. This goes down to the hour, but you can look at flow data by the minute. So if you're trying to diagnose a potential problem that's happening on site, we have this data available to review and to look at.
Yep. And you find that data, you can access it in Base Manager through the reports under the hamburger menu here. We've also got the data available in Pipeview. And then, as Andy mentioned, we've got data available in analytics. And each one of your sites and controllers would be associated with those 3 different applications where you can look at the data, view it, and use it to assess the performance of your system.
And if you haven't used analytics, click on it, check it out, explore it. You can't break anything because it's just an analytics reviewer. You're not programming anything. So you can click on everything and take a look at it and see, how it could help you. Because there's a lot of data in the analytics manager that we often don't talk about. And a lot of times users don't take the initiative to go explore. And there's a ton of information in there.
Yeah. All right. We're at the bottom of the hour already. So it's crazy that 30 minutes goes by that fast. We thank you, Jim and Tracy, for joining us again, impromptu this morning, live on site. Hopefully the information was useful, and hopefully we created some critical thinking on your part that will inspire you to go in and look at your data on your controllers and do a little analysis and understand how your system's performing. And if you have any questions, by all means, reach out to us and let us know.
Yeah.
All right. So with that, go out, have a great week, work hard, be safe, irrigate responsibly. If you've started your blowouts, good luck in that prospect and experience. So we got 20 inches of snow at elevation overnight in Utah last night. So winter is coming.
And it was 80 degrees here in Traverse City, Michigan yesterday.
Yeah, it's nuts. So, all right, everybody. Thanks for joining. We'll see you next week on another exciting episode of Tech Talk Tuesday.
See you guys.
Adios. Bye-bye.